Hey guys, it's Maggie and I am back today, and I gotta say I am just really happy being back on a regular upload schedule, and I appreciate you guys understanding just with how crazy the summer's been and giving me support on these recent videos that I've uploaded. So I'm excited for today's video because I'm gonna be talking about the weird things that I was not warned about before getting my ostomy, and there are a number of weird things. And right after ostomy surgery, I was kind of sitting there like, why did they not warn me about these things? And I realized pretty quickly why they didn't. It's because a lot of this stuff, you have to be living the life of an ostomy patient to realize that they're gonna happen. So I'm gonna share those with you, and hopefully they're helpful for new patients, and I feel like experienced patients are gonna know what I'm talking about. When I say that you kind of have to be a patient to understand what I'm talking about, it made me think of this little story that I have from when I worked as a nurse. And I got pretty familiar with our WOCN, or Wound Ostomy and Continence nurse, in my hospital because I did things, it was called like a skin champion, where basically every month we would go around the hospital and check all of our patients' skin to make sure there was no skin breakdown. And that nurses were basically following all of the guidelines to ensure that their skin didn't break down. So anyways, she became a big inspiration for me. But one of the things, and I didn't even hear this firsthand from her, I heard it secondhand from another nurse, of something she said about me. And it was that, you know, as a WOCN, she had a lot of experience. She had seen a lot of patients and new products and could recommend, you know, different ostomy things to people. And she was really good at that. But something that she didn't have was the actual experience of living with one. I heard this from another nurse. She had said that, you know, I will never wake up in the middle of the night to a bag leaking all over my bed and having to deal with that. That's something that Maggie brings to the table. That's something unique about her. She can talk to patients and know exactly what they're experiencing. So I took that as a compliment. And, you know, it makes me understand that even the most experienced medical professionals, if they don't experience it themselves, they're not gonna know. They're just not gonna know. So I'm gonna talk about some of the funny things I've noticed over the years. And I think one of the first ones was how people with stomas sneeze. If you're ever in a room with a whole bunch of ostomy patients, which I have found myself to be in that situation a lot over the years, it's just funny when somebody sneezes. We all do the same thing. We all hold our stomachs. We all like put our hands over our stomas because it's just, it seems like an instinct or something where, you know, you don't want to get a hernia. You don't want to like prolapse your stoma. And I've never had a hernia. I've never had a stoma prolapse, knock on wood, knock on that wood there. But I still do it. Anytime that I am using my abdominal muscles, I feel the need to hold my stomach. And there are belts and stuff that help you do that too, but I just think it's funny. Every time I sneeze, I'm like, huh. Also, when you're changing your ostomy bag, if you sneeze, watch out. Cover your stoma, because when you're flexing your abdominal muscles, I guess it puts pressure on your intestines and your stoma will explode. Something else to keep in mind when you're actually changing your ostomy appliance is making sure that you're not hungry. When you're hungry, your intestines are gurgling and the juices are flowing, meaning that your stoma can become active. So that's something I'm very careful with. I kind of plan out ahead of time. If I know I need to change my bag today, okay, make sure that I'm not hungry, but also make sure that I haven't eaten recently. So I'll have breakfast in the morning and then I'll wait a couple hours so I'm not hungry, but I haven't just eaten. And then I can change my ostomy without it, you know, erupting. One of the huge things that I was so worried about prior to surgery was that people would know I had it just by looking at me. And the truth of it is, sure, you can see an ostomy bag if it's full, you know, it's going to protrude, or maybe you have a hernia and that protrudes a bit. But the thing is, people, A, are not usually paying attention to that. They're not staring at your stomach looking for it. And B, even if they see it, they don't know what it is 9 out of 10 times. If they're able to immediately know what it is, then they probably have an ostomy themselves, because I remember working at the hospital. One day I was either leaving my shift or coming in for it, and I saw a woman at the front desk, and she lifted her arms above her head or something, and her ostomy bag peeked out. And I remember being like, I see you, me too. But if I was any other person who did not have a stoma, I would not have had a second thought about it. I wouldn't, like, a little piece of plastic or a fabric thing hanging out from your shirt, that could be anything. It could be a tag. It could be your pocket came inside out. It could be literally anything, and people are not thinking about it. I think it's just human nature to think that people are way more worried about us than they actually are. People are usually just concerned with themselves, so wouldn't worry about it. Something I really noticed too in the summer particularly, although this happens throughout the winter, it's basically been the last 13 years of having a stoma, I have permanent tan lines. Like where my wafer sits, there's a tan line all through the winter. So, I mean, that just goes to show you how well clothing works at blocking out the sun. Apparently not super great. But yeah, depending on your skin tone and whether you tan or not, you might have a set of permanent tan lines. Thankfully, how often are people going to see it? I don't know. How often do you change your ostomy in front of people? Only time I ever see it is when I change my ostomy. So when I peel it off, I'm like, oh yeah, working on those tan lines pretty good. This one, your nurses may tell you about. They might not. They might not warn you ahead of time. I was not warned. Your medications that you take may come out either partially digested or not digested at all in your ostomy bag. I remember I used to take Pentasa, those blue-green giant pills that had the beads in them, and I didn't really break them down fully, so I would get kind of like the melted blue-green capsule, and it would have opened, but I would see the beads in my output. So I never thought that they worked that well for me anyway. I don't even think they use it for Crohn's disease normally, so I'm not really sure why I was on it, but didn't do anything for me. Didn't really matter. The only thing that ticks me off is it was a lot of money. So I wish we could have saved my dad some dollars on that, because basically I didn't get anything from them. But that's something to be aware of if you're on extended release medications and your ostomy tends to, you know, flow a little fast. You might want to talk to your doctor about it and be like, hey, is there another option for this? Or do you recommend something different? I know that people have said before, like, hey, you can't take oral birth control pills if you have an ostomy. And that's not necessarily the case. I was able to take birth control pills fine, absorb them. They worked. I know that they did. But some people, depending on how their ostomy works, how much intestine they have left, if they've got an ileostomy versus a colostomy, you know, everybody's different. So it's something to keep in mind if you feel like your oral medications are not doing what they used to prior to surgery. Definitely bring it up with your doctor. Same goes for food too. You'll find that certain foods will either come out whole or will change the color of your output. Yeah, I had flaming hot Cheetos one day. Absolutely terrified myself going to the bathroom because I thought I was bleeding out. Nope, just flaming hot Cheetos. No problem there. So stuff like that, just be aware. If you eat anything like, I don't know, like a blue colored icy, it may turn your output kind of a blue-green. So little bit weird, something to keep in mind. Just remember what you ate. So when you go to the bathroom and you freak out, be like, oh, you know what? I ate something red or I ate something blue. I'm not dying. One thing that I don't really remember this happening early on with my ostomy, but as I've gotten older, it has bothered me a bit more. I actually just mentioned this in a recent video too. The ostomy bags crinkle. And it does depend on the brand, which I've noticed. I used to use Convatec very early on, never noticed any bag crinkling, although I don't know if it would have bothered me then, maybe it would have. But I use Hollister and it's very crinkly. I was recently using some Convatec bags and they did not crinkle nearly as much. So now I'm like, I want that. So something to keep in mind, there are different products that work better, and some are not as good. And that's the whole battle of finding the ostomy products that work for you. And there are ways to combat the crinkle sound. If you watched my recent video about the anxiety medications, you'll know why the crinkling has bothered me. Very distracting. But I will put on like my Stoma cloak, my little ostomy cover. That helps a ton. I will wear tighter clothing. Like I've got the shorts that I have been wearing recently from Amazon that I pull up. So there are things you can do even if you don't change your whole ostomy appliance. But yeah, it just bugs me. Oh, this is a huge one. And I know a lot of you are gonna know what I'm talking about. The balloon in the morning. If you know what the balloon is in the morning, then you have an ostomy. Overnight, sometimes your bag will fill up with air, with gas. And oh my gosh, the amount of times that I've had to do the little shimmy out of bed where you like can't bend forward, so you like roll to the edge of the bed and put your legs down to try and get out of bed without popping, basically. Oh my gosh. And it's always when the filter kind of gives up. Like I use bags with filters, but after they get wet, they don't work. So it's just one of those things that thankfully over time my body's gotten used to it, and I can kind of wake myself up when my bag is getting to that point. But it's a scary few seconds getting out of bed to get to the bathroom. And if you have dogs that get excited when you wake up, Dixie, I'm looking at you. She's asleep on the couch right now. She gets excited and she's like nosing me and she wants, but it's a scary few seconds getting out of bed to get to the bathroom. And if you have dogs that get excited when you wake up, Dixie, I'm looking at you. She's asleep on the couch right now. She gets excited and she's like nosing me and she wants to get pets. She wants me to like scratch her and get down on the ground with her. And I'm like, I can't. This thing will pop. So I know you know what the balloon is if you've got an ostomy. And the final thing for me that I just didn't really put a lot of stock into was that my weight fluctuated a ton with my ostomy. It still does. When I first got it, I gained 30 pounds in a month, and that's one of the things that can happen. If you've been sick for a while and using intestine that just wasn't working for you, you may find that after you get your ostomy, you're healthy. You're able to get nutrients again, and you might gain weight. You also might find, which I have found, that especially with ileostomies, you can lose weight pretty rapidly. So I remember getting a stomach bug. I got astrovirus back in college. I lost 7 pounds of water weight in a day because, you know, you can get, like an average person with a GI bug will get diarrhea, but it is hardcore. There is nothing to slow it down when you don't have a colon. So that was a little scary, and I did wind up in the hospital. But just on an average day, if I get a little dehydrated, I will lose a bit more weight than the average person. Or if my Crohn's is kind of acting up and I'm not really absorbing much, food does tend to go faster through me. I have a lot harder time just because the amount of time that food is actually in me is shorter, so I absorb less from it. So it's this whole balancing act, but it's something to keep in mind. Your weight may fluctuate quite a bit, and that can be a good thing for some people. It can be a bad thing for some people. So yeah, these are some of the things that I've noticed over the last 13 years of having my stoma, and I feel like I could do a bunch of these videos because there are just so many little nuances with having one that your nurse, your doctor, your surgeon may not be aware of because they're not living with one every day, or there's probably a high chance that they're not living with one every day. Let me know some of the things that you guys have noticed about living with an ostomy. I find it funny because with any medical device or anything different going on with you, you have your own experiences that other people would not really know about. Like I remember I worked with somebody who was a type 1 diabetic, and she had a CGM and a pump. The way that she would attach it to herself kind of has the same like adhesive fabric that a lot of ostomy wafers do. So I had made a video talking about skin barriers, and she texted me and she was like, hey, do you think that would work for protecting my skin? Because my skin breaks down when it gets damp from the shower and, you know, it gets all irritated. So I think she wound up trying skin barrier for ostomies and it wound up working for her. So it's just those things that, like, as a diabetic, that may not have been mentioned to her when she was getting set up with her CGM. Who knows? But yeah, let me know what you've kind of noticed over your time having a stoma, and I look forward to reading those comments. Thank you so much for watching this video and supporting my channel. I will see you very soon. Bye, guys.